what I'm saying. Thank you. Okay? Can everyone hear now? All right. Well, still doing it. Yeah, channel 1. Perfect. All right. Let's pray. Uh-oh, they're still, hold on. Okay? Yeah, good idea. Whoever told me that it takes some time to pass all this stuff out, you were right, I was wrong. All right. Thanks, Rex. All right. I think that's it. Wonderful. Now we'll pray. Thank you, Lord, for blessing us to be here today. We ask for your presence, for wisdom, for truth and integrity. Please, Lord, help us to follow your lead. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Thank you all for coming. It is great to see everyone here, especially for the education part. And so this is a District 10 candidate for supervisor who's standing over here. She's going to introduce herself and make comments because she's leaving. So we want to give her 2 minutes to make her comments, and then she's going to leave. She won't be here at 3:30.
2 minutes, huh? 2 minutes. All right, timing. I know that's right. 2 minutes. All right. My name is Sala Chandler, and I have lived here in San Francisco for 29 years. I was actually from this particular community. I lived on Pueblo Street when also the towers were here. And so I do know the struggles. I was raised with, have 2 children, 1 boy and 1 girl. My son was murdered 3 years ago in Fillmore, who was just trying to cash his check. He was only 19 years old, and his name is Yalani Chinya Marende. I'm running for office to give a voice and a representation and leadership to the disenfranchised people of District 10. Far too long, previous elected politicians have not done enough for us here in District 10. I lost my son to these streets here, and nothing was done to curb this type of senseless violence that took my son. San Francisco is set up so that only elected people or their appointees have the power and resources to make real change for any community. I'm running to give the people here in District 10 a share in these resources so that all members of District 10 can thrive. The most important issues have been plaguing District 10 for decades. It's the lack of educational opportunities for our children, the lack of economic opportunities for people of District 10, the lack of opportunities to own a home here, and the lack of opportunities to own a business. The police creating a police state and enacting police brutality in District 10 and homelessness is also a great problem. The solutions. To address the lack of educational opportunities, I would create a system where tech companies would pay their employees to tutor our children in exchange for tax write-offs on their payroll taxes. To address the lack of business and economic opportunities, I will use my position to use the EB-5 Investor Immigrant Visa Program to directly fund small businesses and create hundreds of jobs. And this is terrible, you can't even speak. Okay, but anyway, okay. And also, I am a woman of culture. Oh, thank you. And I will acknowledge all cultures because to me, that is the unifying principle. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Now we'll have questions for introductions by you. You have 2 minutes to say whatever you would like, and then you'll have questions. We can just go in order. No, please stand here when you
Am I good to go? Okay, great. Hi, my name is Phil Kim. I began my time in education in the classroom where I taught 7th grade life science and more recently 8th grade life science in West Oakland. I now have the great privilege of overseeing a network of schools on curriculum and instruction, teaching and learning for science, design, computer science, and engineering, and just obsessing about the quality of teaching and instruction that happen in our classrooms. I have given my entire career now to becoming an expert on STEM education policy, and I've done that work nationally, rolling out curriculum across the country, working more locally and regionally and at the state level with the California Department of Education on the next generation science standards, and more locally here in the Bay, working in our classrooms every day, coaching our teachers and our principals on what it means to deliver incredible science education. On a more personal note, I began my life, I guess, in Detroit. I was born in Detroit, grew up in the suburbs there. I am a proud product of public schools. My parents are immigrants from South Korea, small business owners, and I saw firsthand the challenges that my family faced in raising our family with not all the resources under the sun, and it was tough. And I'm proud to say now that my younger brother is now in his 2nd month of college, doing really well. But the reality is we've had a lot of challenges growing up. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people in our city who are also facing those same challenges, many of whom attend our public schools here. In my opinion, the thing that is going to close the gap, the thing that we know works in making sure our students get what they need, is ensuring that our teachers are best equipped and supported with the best possible resources to just do their job well. And that means we need to have a system and an environment that supports them by coaching them and by focusing on what we arguably should be doing best in our district, teaching, right? And we don't have enough conversations in our district about what the quality of our education looks like in our schools. So I'm proud to be here. I'm happy to answer more questions. And thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lee Miao Levitt. I'm a parent of a public school child, an immigrant, and a longtime educator. 20 years ago, I started my public school career with 2 programs, actually 2 schools, Thurgood Marshall and then Gloria R. Davis, where I started a mentoring program when the teachers did not understand what mentoring was about. And so working with the principals and the support that we had for something that brought in people from the corporations and the local community to provide volunteer mentors, we really built a program that has made ripple effects. Today, DCYF still has a funded program for mentoring at Thurgood Marshall. So fast forward, my career has been at City College of San Francisco since 2004. And in that capacity, I have served many students from a lot of our diverse communities. One important thing is that City College could have fallen off the map. It could have been shut down 3 or 4 years ago, and that was due to a corrupt accrediting agency. You understand that crisis when there are forces that try to descend on our communities, and City College is a big community. I take pride in being part of Frontline, part of the effort to save City College. I did the media and the communications work, also lobbied and advocated with our supervisors and our state legislators. And in that process, I got to understand how politics works and who will support our communities. This is what we have to do. And, when I'm on school board, I'm going to look at the root source of problems. We need to take care of our communities that are being displaced and in jeopardy, right? We need to look at under-resourced schools and also under-supported, underpaid teachers. But of course, our kids are primary to that. I believe in what's called social emotional learning. If we don't have things like mentoring, if we don't have social work, if we don't actually put the resources in so that with restorative justice, we are creating ways for our young people to find self-expression, to channel their energies into positive pursuits, then we're not properly serving our young people in all the ways that we need to. I firmly believe in that well-rounded support for our students. I've done that work at City College. Thank you so much. And with Unified, with the students who have come in through dual enrollment to City College while they're still in high school. Lee Meow Lovett, not related to the country singer.
Talofa aloha malo elelei. My name is Faunga Molinga. I am a school social worker and a parent. I'm the first Pacific Islander to ever run for school board in the history of this city. We're sitting here in the house of the Lord, and I'm sitting here thinking, I grew up literally across the street on Sunnydale. I spent my whole 5th grade there. And all these Samoans on Han Street, that's my family. And the ones up on top of the hill. So I went to Paul Revere, Luther Burbank. My mama went to Wilson, and then I went to McAteer and graduated from Balboa High School. And I say that because I'm from this city, right? I'm from this city, and I understand what it is to live in these communities and be from these cities and get on the bus when they was giving out fast passes, right? And so my platform really is about the work that we do in District 10 specifically, right? I'm a social worker. I understand that we have to tackle mental health, right? We have to get better at wellness. Never has there been a therapist or a social worker elected to this board, right? And the mental health issues that's plaguing this city is very, 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 very tough. I was here in November when they were shooting up the street and people were running down with guns and kids had to go to school the next day. We're talking about some trauma, right? The third thing for me is community schools. Now, the school district can't do it alone. They might say they can, but they can't. They need the community to help them out. They need to get into these communities. They need to work in partnership with the families, with the churches, the stores. They need everybody's help. And then the last is I'm a parent, right? It's hard for me to take care of my kids, let alone these teachers in these schools trying to take care of themselves and having to teach every single day. I've built nonprofits in the Bayview. I built the care center out there at the Bayview YMCA. We built the first community schools up over here at Burton High School when they're getting ready to shut it down. In 4 years, we helped boost that attendance by 400. We decreased the dropout rate by 50%. It's probably one of the best high schools in the city right now. Right now, I work for the Department of Public Health. I was helping building these wellnesses in the Hope SF, but now they got me doing mobile crisis stuff. I was on 3rd Street last night with the families, with the individuals. I'll share it a little bit later, but thank you for having me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Allison Collins, and I'm the only person running that actually has kids in the school system, and I have taught in the school system. I used to teach at Galileo. 20 years ago, I started teaching because I was inspired by my dad, who's the first in his entire family to graduate from college. He went on to become one of the first African-American professors at UCLA. And that was a major, major feat for him because his parents were not allowed to go to high school because of Jim Crow laws in the South. So I grew up with that history, and I wanted to make a difference. And I've spent my entire life looking at how structural racism plagues our education system and how it plays out. And it allows some kids to get access to quality schools and quality programs, and it denies other children access. And I've used that knowledge to organize families over the last 10 years. I've been a parent on the African American Parent Advisory Council. We've organized families to get a redesign of Carver Middle School. And I've also worked with families in the Tenderloin and in Soma to get money from the businesses in those neighborhoods. Facebook, Twitter, they should be contributing to our schools as well. I'm one of the most highly endorsed candidates that's running because of my track record. I'm endorsed by 5 out of 7 of the Board of Ed members because they know I've been showing up and I've been doing the work. I'm also endorsed by 8 out of 11 of the Board of Supervisors, the Teachers Union, SEIU 10-1, and the Democratic Party. So the reason that I'm so highly endorsed is because I have been doing the work for so long, and I think that this is a really important role to play. Our school board, a lot of times people don't really look at it. They think about supervisors and the mayor. But I know, for one, what's going on in this country. It seems uncontrollable, but we can make a difference in individual schools. And I've seen change as a parent leader in my own school and in other people's schools. When families work with educators, we can organize and we can make sure that our schools are serving our kids and making sure the next generation has what we had. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alita Fisher. In the 13 years that my 4 children have attended 7 SFU SD schools, I've been a very active parent. A few years ago, my third of my 4th kids was identified as needing an individualized education plan because he has special needs. And I remember sitting around the table of that first meeting, being so excited that we were finally going to put something together that was going to help my kid and support him in the classroom. And so, of course, I came in with a ton of ideas of what we should do. And the administrator in the room looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, we just don't have the resources here to do what you want us to do." Sorry. That was the moment that I made the switch from active parent to parent activists. So now here we are 7 years later. I'm the chair of the Community Advisory Committee for Special Education. I sit on the LCAP task force. I do a ton of work with the district. I sit in meetings all day long. And I'm ready to go from this side of the table where I stand up and give public comment to our Board of Ed members and supervisors. I want to be on the other side of the table. I want to be the one writing the policies. I want to be the ones making sure that our students are welcome and supported and loved at every single school they attend. And sadly, that's not always the case. I'm a former foster parent. My babies are all adopted out of foster care. And they've seen some trauma and had some attachment issues. And that plays out in the classroom, not just for my babies, but for many of our babies. And we need to provide more supports for all students. The more we can provide support for the most needy, the more everyone thrives. So that's why I'm here and running. So thank you very much.
While he's going over there, let me just ask you or suggest that every time you speak, you say your name because people are not familiar with you. You don't have to, just a suggestion. Oh,
Again?
you'll have 90 seconds to answer the question he's going to ask you. There are 3 questions. Each person can answer the question. Okay? All right.
Good afternoon again. My name is Miguel Campos. Welcome, and welcome all the candidates. I will be asking them 3 questions and see how they answer for all of us. The first question is, if elected, what changes would you make to improve Visitation Valley School? Who wants to start? You can come up as you. Visitation Valley.
So I know that this district or this area of the city, sometimes the schools are facing under-enrollment. And I think what's been really great lately is Visitation Valley Middle School is actually seeing a surge in enrollment. But I worked in the Bayview, and it's very similar to Visitation Valley. There's a sense of feeling sometimes like you're overlooked by the district and by the city at large. I'm somebody that I visit schools. I've been visiting schools, and so just actually coming out and speaking with parents and teachers about what's going on. But I think we need to boost, there's some amazing things happening in our schools, and we need to really celebrate that work because then it encourages more investment in our schools. So I worked with some families in the Bayview, and we started Friends of Bayview Public Schools, and we're looking for outside funders to help infuse money into us getting that word out. Because a lot of parents don't know that they have good choices in this area, and there's also a lot of businesses who should know there's good work going on and they should be investing and volunteering in that. And I'd like to see that also. I know Visitation Valley is also seeing a swing up, but we need to continue to invest and continue to increase visibility about what these schools need, but also what they're doing well. Thank you.
I'll just focus on two things that I could see us doing. So at City College, I've actually counseled directly about 1,000 preschool teachers in the past 8 years. And in that role, I've worked with communities from all over. And so I think there's a way that through early education, especially the programs that are in Viz Valley, we can support those parents to understand, and also the teachers to understand what our schools in this neighborhood can provide for them, so that there's a natural, seamless transition, which is really critical, right, to have continuity in our communities. So that was one thing. And I think the other thing is to take this whole enrollment system, turn it on its head. And what I mean by that is that it is so sort of kind of top down that the only notice I've seen besides the email I got for the enrollment fair on the 13th was like a little poster on a window on Franklin Street. Somebody walked about 2 blocks from 555 Franklin, like, hello, why aren't you coming out? I know there are those mobile buses and stations that come out to the communities, but why don't we do something not dry and boring and scary like a big enrollment fair? Let's showcase the arts and our kids and the programs and the wonderful, beautiful things they do in the schools. When I toured 12 schools, all the way from the west side where we live to Sarah, right, then my heart just melted when I heard African drumming, when I saw the arts and music and all the amazing programs that go on. Let's do showcases. It takes time, but let's do them.
Phil Kim, running for the same board. I think I'll focus in on a few things that I see. Number one, I firmly believe that we need to make sure as a district we are putting our resources as close to students as possible. When we talk about the kind of supports and structures that we need, and therefore the kind of spending that we need at school sites, we know that the needs in Visitation Valley, in the Bayview, in the southeastern part of our city look very different from the kinds of needs and therefore resources and money that needs to be spent in other parts of our city. And we need to make sure that we're giving our schools as much site authority as possible, because they're the ones that ultimately see through those projects and those resources for our kids. I'm proud to have worked in the Bayview with several schools, making sure that primarily around academics and teaching and learning. But I think one of the biggest things around the teaching and learning aspect is, we have a very rich, diverse neighborhood here in Viz Valley and in the broader southeastern community of San Francisco. We need to make sure that our curriculum and our teaching practices are matching the richness and diversity and perspectives of the students that are coming into our schools by giving our teachers time to plan, to make adjustments in the curriculum, and giving them the adequate coaching to actually work through what that looks like. By sitting alongside them and actually saying, hey, okay, you have this little curriculum that came in a box from our district office. Now what are you going to do with it? Right? How are you going to change that to match the needs of our students in our classrooms? And I think that's incredibly important to look at. Thank you.
Can I ask you to repeat the question just to make sure I'm answering what you want?
My question was, if elected, what changes would you make to improve Visitation Valley School?
Okay. So I'm going to focus specifically on changes. I think we're starting to do a lot of great things in schools, but I think we need to boost them. In order to support students, I think one of the best things we can do is give our students role models for people who look like them, who have the same backgrounds and experiences that they've had. So we should be doing a whole lot more outreach and recruiting in our own communities, hiring. A lot of times what I see in classrooms is the paraeducators are parents of kids who've had special needs, or community members, or, let's support and elevate and give more paths for people to come in and support our kids in schools. We have a Pathway to Teaching program, which some of our schools cite, either our after-school program folks or our paras can work with the district to get their teaching credentials and become certified teachers. That program is completely under-resourced. Our paras and our community members in that program could really benefit from a lot more coaching and support. I love everything that I've heard from everyone so far. We've got a lot of great things that we could do. And we need a lot more money to do it, frankly. So let's all work together, bring in the community resources, as Walunga mentioned earlier, and make sure that it's not just the schools and it's not just the teachers, it's all of us supporting our kids. Thank you.
Faunga, Molinga. So I echo what everyone else said. When it comes to schools in Visitation Valley, what we're thinking about Little Viz, Big Viz, and then there's another elementary school down that way, which is a Filipino immersion program. My thing is mental health, right? My thing is, can we build wellness clinics in all these elementary schools so that we have social workers, nurses, pediatricians, therapists on site so that they can start helping the young folks at a young age and parents at the same time. We do have to, like Phil and Alita was pointing to, we do have to put more money into schools in this district. But on top of that, we need the leadership that is going to actually say it and do it, right? So a lot of us know, but the thing is, are we going to actually do it when it comes time to do it, right? And so I had this talk with London, right? I've been endorsed by the mayor, and London knows where I stand. I told her I'm from the southeast side, and I talked to Allison about this too, right? So not only are the schools important, but this group in here is important because some of the issues that we're hearing on the trail, I talked to Allison, what does it have to do with the southeast side of San Francisco, right? So not only do we have to, put funds into our schools and programs, but we also have to empower the community so that we bring our issues to the table and we have forums like this all the time, right? All the time, rooms packed, and so that our issues are not only here in Visitation Valley, but it's citywide.
Okay, now I have the second question. Please listen to it carefully. If elected, how would you turn around the declining enrollment in Visitation Valley School? Who wants to start?
Okay, Alita Fisher. I don't think all of our schools have declining enrollments, first of all. I think we've got some really good, bright stories, but definitely we need a lot more PR. We need to be talking more about some of the positive things that have been happening. Within the district, Little Viz and Big Viz, the way they've implemented PBIS, they're used as role models, but that's in the district. That's teachers talking. Positive Behavior Intervention Services. They use a program called PACS to help encourage positive community building behaviors and incentivize the kids to work collaboratively with each other. But that's amongst teaching communities that's shared. That's not shared with the greater community or with parents who are looking at potential schools. My oldest daughter just graduated from Mission High School, which is an amazing school. It's got great wraparound supports. But people who had been in the city for decades, much longer than us, were freaked out when I said I was sending my kid to Mission. Oh my gosh, haven't you heard what a horrible school that is? It's a fantastic school. It has more kids that go to UC Berkeley than any other public high school in the city. So we really have to do a much better job of messaging just the great things that are going on here. It's my and sharing as much as we can about all the great things that are happening and getting more families actually into the schools, community events. Thank you.
So I talked about the arts at first. Arts, languages, science, and tech. So what can we do with the languages, right? When we've had immersion programs at some of the East Side, Southeast Side schools, that's brought in enrollment. But when you do that, you also want the cultures and the programs to be in community, to have the parents, the guardians, on the same page as to being part of one school. That's really, really important. So I think that bringing in languages would be great just for all our students, because Americans in general need to learn a few languages to kind of be part of the world community, and not just to go travel. But I think it's really an enrichment for the brain. So that's one. Science and tech. I have been with our biotechnology program at City College for 5 years as the counselor. And in that capacity, we have put so many of our students in internships at UCSF and the local companies. At SFUSD, they're trying to do that with their biotech programs. But why don't we bring some of this into the elementary and middle schools too? With the next generation science standards, which I'm intimately familiar with, having been recently trained in the teaching credential program, we can provide those hands-on resources so that all of our kids can learn, and let's showcase that. I have media experience, and when you bring in reporters and when you help people see this in our news and on television, that our kids are doing amazing things, that really sells things. When I was at Sunnyside to visit years back, I did a KQED commentary because I was so impressed with the science fair and what was going on with all our kids there.
Faung again. So again, when we were at Burton High School, when they asked us to go up there, Burton literally was on the verge of shutting down. They were like at 850, and I think they were like 50 kids away from shutting down. We helped increase the enrollment by 400 kids within 4 years, and we did that through a community schools model. And so when we got there, we put a case managing program in place, we put an employment program in place, we put Saturday school in place. And really, at the end of the day, it comes down to resources. We brought $1 million into Burton High School. Now they're up at like 1,200, and people are trying to get into the school left and right. Burton High School, I talk about it all the time because I'm so proud of the institution. They're like the premier high school on the southeast side of San Francisco. So it can be done. It can be done, but the resources have to be in place. And then on top of that, the leadership has to be in place. At that time, Burton High School, Bill Kappenhagen was up there. And at the same time, they had a great beacon director in Carol Hill. The leadership, the training, all of that has to come in place. The next thing we did when we were at Burton High School is we took the school and we put it into the community. So there's a unity parade that happens in the Bayview or on 3rd Street every single year. We brought Burton High School into the community. They bring their band every single time. We take teachers into the community, door knock, right? But it literally is a community school model. And again, please go check it out. If you're in the area, you guys have a really, really good school up the street. They can do the same thing with all the other schools in this district. I truly believe that. Thank you.
Phil Kim again. We know all of our schools, teaching is an incredibly relational profession, right? At the end of the day, we all know parents talk. They all talk to each other. They all know when they have experiences both positive and negative about school sites. And at the end of the day, what we need is for our teachers to have the time and space dedicated, set aside, to actually do the hard job of building relationships with families, calling parents, going door to door. I think when I was teaching, we every single day, for the entirety of summer school, would spend at least 2 hours just calling parents, and before our kids were even with us, and just saying hi, getting them to know our name, giving them our number so they can call us directly. I think everyone in this room can think back to an individual teacher who was just awesome. They were very transparent with you about things that were happening in the classroom. You knew exactly when and how to reach out to them, and that just requires time. We can bring all the programs that we want into our schools, and we know what will actually change the relationships between schools and our communities are actually building relationships with our teachers and our students and their families. And so I think, one, we need to focus on making sure our teachers have the time to actually make phone calls, to actually meet with families and build those relationships. And two, that requires, honestly, training on behalf of the principal to know exactly what to do, to how to build environments and cultures at school sites that are supportive of that kind of mindset, and making sure that they have the equipment, they're equipped with the skills and knowledge and training to be able to do that well. Thank you.
Hi. So this is a really interesting question for me because I'm on the African American Parent Advisory Council, and we've been working with the district to help improve participation for African American families. Because we have some groups that they like over participate in enrollment fairs and things like that. We have other communities, they don't even know that there's an assignment system, right? And they're not even participating. And especially in the African American and Latinx communities, that's happening, right? Or we have an enrollment fair that's like one time and you can't go and then you don't find out any information. I'm currently going through the high school enrollment process, and my kids are telling me, hey mom, we gotta do this, we gotta do that. And I'm thinking, could an adult talk to me about this? Could I get information from central office? And then I went down to central office and they said, oh no, we don't have anything to do with that. You're supposed to do all the research. And I think, I don't have time to do all the research. I'm campaigning, and there's parents who work 3 jobs or they don't have Wi-Fi at home. How are they supposed to go online and find about all these great programs, right? I think central office needs to step it up, okay? They need to take on a little more work. And I think there's a lot of great work happening. You know, teachers share information, but they don't know what's going on in every single school in the district, right? So central office, I worked in central office, and some departments do their job. Some departments aren't doing enough to support schools. And teachers I want them focusing on instruction and building relationships, but they don't have the time to tell parents how to navigate a system, right? Central office needs to do more to make it easier for parents, and they need to come out to the community like this and talk with families and tell them how to help them enroll. So thank you very much. My name is Allison Collins. I forgot to
Okay, before I ask the third question, for some of the people who wasn't here present when we started, my name is Miguel Campos, and I advise all the candidates to put a little bit close attention to the last question that I'm going to ask. If elected, how will you address the following statistics? 49% of California students are proficient in English, and 38% are proficient in math. 14% of San Francisco black students are proficient in English, and 10% are proficient in math. 22% of San Francisco's Latino students are proficient in English, and 16% are proficient in math. Who would like to start?
The second is how we address these statistics.
So I'm following again, and you know, what we're talking about is the opportunity gap, right? And so, you know, Pacific Islanders also fall in that same realm, right? And so Pacific Islanders and Latinos have the lowest bachelor's attainments for 25s and older in the whole entire country, right? They're at 12%. And so I definitely understand the struggle. And so I was on 3rd Street last night. I'm a social worker. And one of the brothers who work with me, he was like, these are my peoples. There's cops out there. They're riling up kids. We need to go outside. This is after work. So we get out there. We're walking around, talking to each group, calm everybody down. What I left with last night was some of those people are parents. Some of our kids are going through some stuff that ain't got nothing to do with education. Our black and brown kids are super smart. But if they're shooting in these neighborhoods and they got to go to school the next day, you think they're going to learn something? We got to get better at not only taking care of this, but this too. And that's all some of our kids need at the end of the day, because you can tell them you care about them. They'll go in there and solve all the problems in the world. We also got to improve our special education system, right? Yeah. We got to improve our special education, but I'll just leave it like that. Thank you.
And I'll pick up exactly where Faunga left off, because I'm a special education advocate. And so when you take those statistics and when you combine an African American student who also has an IEP, the proficiency rate drops under 5%. Less than 1 in 20 of our black students who have IEPs are testing proficient or above. That's criminal. And one of my babies falls in that category. He's not proficient. So we need to do much better. We've got kids whose needs aren't being met in the classroom. They're being counseled out. They're being sent to the office for disruptive behavior, when what's happening is their needs aren't being met in the classroom. They're frustrated because they can't learn. The support isn't there for them. They can learn. They can learn. They're just not being taught the way they need to be taught. They're not being supported the way they need to be supported. And so my work with the Community Advisory Committee for Special Education, we're working with the district on this right now. We're working on getting more paras into the teacher, more behaviors training for teachers. We're working on getting better interventions for reading, because so many of our children don't get even suggested for special education until they're already 3 years behind in reading. That's not okay. You should have reading interventions starting right away in kindergarten if you're even a little bit behind. So thank you.
Before I talk about strategies, I want to say that your child, your grandchildren, your nephews and nieces are not statistics. And when we look at these, out-of-date pieces of information on great schools, throw that out. That's funded by the Walton family. Family Foundation. They are not supporting who we really are because there are so many different intelligences. That said, we live in this world where we still have tests. We live in this world where you're still tested and graded against, to the standards of the mainstream and the dominant society. And when you have to deal with that, then let's look at basic things like literacy and make literacy fun. Those Fontes and Pinnell tests my kid has gone through. Teachers spend that time and you find out where you need that support with the reading. Bring more reading specialists into the schools. With those math tests, I think our district tests are probably stronger than those state standardized tests. I took one of those state standardized tests when it was in the beta form, and I said, what is this? It's an SAT test at the 3rd grade level. So we should work actually more closely with the district assessments, and so that math becomes fun, right? All those basic skills are taught in a way, and Common Core is actually, with all the warts, it's actually a way to help young people learn in different ways, using more visual methods, using problem solving, working in teams, addressing sort of real life problems using these skills that they're building.
Okay, there's two things at play, I think, here. One is instruction, obviously, right? But teachers can't always teach when they're overloaded. And I was one of those teachers. So I love having kids from all different backgrounds, all different reading levels or whatever. But if you don't have support, you can't meet everyone where they're at. So one of the best experiences I had a lot of gifted students, newcomer students, students with disabilities, but I also had a para in the classroom with me. And I also was really knowledgeable in my content. So when I had a student, I could take a lesson and I could differentiate, and I could go high and I could go low, and I could pull in where kids were interested in things. Teachers need support in doing that. That's both training, but that's also physical support. Having smaller classes or having people able to help with those kids that have emotional needs or maybe need to go a little slower. The teacher can keep going and move the whole kind of thing forward. But the other thing I really want to name that nobody wants to talk about when you talk about the achievement gap is it's a racial achievement gap. And my daughters are mixed like me, and they present like me. One looks white, one looks like my color, and they're friends with a friend who's black. And they were sitting in a math class, and one of the kids said, oh, well, black kids are dumb. And they had to listen to that in their math class, right? These are things, it's not uncommon for kids to hear these kinds of things or to see things. Like, we did a flag presentation last week, and my daughter Gemma brought home the Mississippi flag, which has the Confederate flag in the flag, right? I had to process that as a parent. If you're black or Latino, you have to process these things, and so we need to deal with the racism in our curriculum and make that less of a barrier for our families.
I don't think there's much that any of us will necessarily disagree with in terms of strategies to tackle the achievement gap. The perspective that I take is specifically around, yes, there is this massive achievement gap as indicated by the state level test that just kind of everyone takes every year. And there are tangible things that our schools can do to make sure that our students are ready, not just for that test, but generally learning, right? This requires a few things. One, we need to relook and re-examine our curricular, our systems around curricular supports, right? What are we actually teaching? What is the content of the stuff that we are handing in front of our teachers and saying, hey, this is the kind of work that you need to actually deliver to your kids? We need to actually re-examine that, right? And make sure that it is reflective of both our students, it's reflective of our teachers, and that we're providing the adequate supports within the curriculum to actually make that something that can be used and taken in the classroom. 2, our teachers need the adequate training and support. In all the schools that I work with, we have at least 2 to 3 dedicated on-site, full-time coaches whose their job is to sit there and work with teachers on thinking through classroom management, thinking through classroom culture, thinking through how to plan, sitting alongside them and working with them on how to take one lesson and differentiate that for their students who need that additional scaffolding and students who are ready to go, right? We need someone to actually sit with our teachers and work with them on what that looks like when they get into the classroom. And those coaches, in my opinion, need to be site-based and in every school. Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank you all for the good answers that you gave us on all the 3 questions, and I want to wish you a good luck to all and every one of you.
Yes, go ahead. Answer the question.
Currently, there's 7 seats. 3 seats are available now, and there's 19 candidates running. None of us have ever been on the board, so there's no incumbent. So it's all new people this time around.
All right, so thank you very much, sir. And I think what we're going to do, we have to make a little change because our translator has a time constraint. So do you have a little bit more time? I can't see her. No, she has no more time. So is there anyone that can translate Cantonese into Cantonese? I took French in high school. Not that would help if there was anybody French here. But I didn't take any Cantonese. Is there anyone that can translate? Because we have quite a contingency here, and I would just hate for them not to understand what was going on. Wonderful! Thank you! All right, and let's give Irene a hand because she just stepped in. Irene, could you write down your number? Or can I contact you through the... Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Huh? Oh, yeah, don't leave. Don't leave. I'm sorry, say it again. Who, her? All right, well, we'll deal with that in 30 minutes. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to ask questions, allow questions from the audience. Oh, hold on. And so if you have a question, we don't have a lot of time. We have time maybe for 1 or 2 questions. So if you have a question, please come over here. It'll be, so I see Mother is coming. That is my mother, so I can call her Mother. If one more. All right, our young activist over here, ready to make her voice known. All right, and so before we get to these questions, I just want to say this one thing, that there are 19 candidates, as was said, but we only see 5 here in Viz Valley. And to me, that's significant. I don't know why the others didn't show up, but I do appreciate the 5 that were interested in us enough to give us their point of view. All right. I appreciate you all.
Thank you so much for showing such a wonderful interest in our community. We certainly appreciate it. I have a question regarding, you've used that terminology about interacting And I want to talk about that in particular. In this church, we had 2 parents given a phone call saying that their sons had been suspended. Now, anyone who's read the new Jim Crow knows what that means and what that determines about our children. Why is this archaic, destructive practice still being used against our young boys? It happens mostly to our young boys, but also to our girls also. And it's a disproportionate number to the black community. They do not discipline the white community this way. They do it to us. And all it is doing is pushing our boys into prison. And so I want to know why there are better ways. I'm sorry, I have this also on this. It has been proven that it's an ineffective way to discipline. It doesn't work. So what is being done, 2-part question, to do away with this archaic, destructive method, and what is being done to institute methods that actually do work and affect better behavior in our young boys? Okay.
Okay, this is a topic I could actually talk about for hours because as the adoptive parent of African American kids, my past 14 years have been a journey in understanding my white privilege, right? And the racism that exists in society. And it breaks my heart when I watch my kids walk into a store ahead of me and see the store clerk get a little bit of the furrowed eyebrow, and then as soon as I walk in and they call me mom, watch that furrowed brow relax. I mean, that's just, it breaks my heart. We are actually significantly disproportionate, we have been in years, for the number of students, African American boys, who we identify to emotionally disturbed classrooms. And the state sanctioned us and made us take some of our special education money and put it to proactive programs. And so that's where things like implicit bias training for teachers came from. We're doing a lot of work. I'm on a committee called Coordinated Early Intervening Services. And so district leaders get together to talk about how we can better implement restorative practices and give teachers more tools and deal with some of that underlying bias. It's not enough and it's not fast enough. I sat in an IEP meeting 2 Fridays ago for a 5th grade boy who, of course, was African American, had been suspended after his IEP hadn't been implemented for an entire year. How can we let that happen in this day and age? Okay.
So I think what we're seeing is, just for policy-wise, and I want everyone to know this, the district passed policy. It was called Safe and Supportive Schools Policy. If you have a child in the district, go look that up, because basically it says we're going to reduce suspensions and we're going to focus on restorative practices, which is actually having kids talk about how their behavior impacts their community, and students that are targeted also get to talk about what they need to make it better, right? So we resolve conflict. Obviously, this is time intensive and it takes training, and the district invested a lot of money in training teachers, and we saw a decrease in suspensions and expulsions. Guess what? It's coming up again. Why is that? We're not doing the training anymore, okay? And that's not acceptable, frankly, right? Just because we did it once doesn't mean we stop doing it. So right away, what you can do is you can ask at your school, are your staff trained in restorative practices? Are they also trained in safety care training? That's the training that's needed for teachers to safely break up fights and also de-escalate fights. Teachers won't break things up if they are worried that they might harm children in breaking it up, and there are safe ways to do that. All schools should have a behavior plan, okay? But for some reason, we're okay with some schools not having that. So those are 3 things that you can do right now, and those are things I plan to do, is go to every school and ask, are these 3 things in place? As well as implicit bias training for all teachers, which the African American Parent Advisory Council has been asking for several years, along with the Teachers Union.
So thank you for the question. I was actually with a teacher earlier today, and they were telling me, one of the kids got suspended, and because he got suspended, he ended up on a five-day suspension. He ended up in the streets, and he ended up getting arrested. And he was like in high school, so it's a real issue, right? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done on all levels. Like Allison is right. There is a resolution that was passed that we need to enforce it. However, in addition to that, what the teachers have been doing is they haven't been sending the kids to the office, or they don't really know what to do. So they haven't been also doing anything in the school. So the suspension rate has come down, but the behaviors in the classroom and stuff are still elevated, right? And so again, for me, it's all about mental health and social emotional wellness, right? And it really isn't about academics for all of our kids, right? And so one of the things that we've been playing around with is like, can we educate our teachers so that they can be teacher social workers? So that they're not only teachers in the classroom, but they're also looking at things from a social work perspective, so that when kids are saying things, they can interpret it in a way where it's not personal and offensive to them, and they could redirect it to a way that is supportive of the kid, And so I've been doing this work around mental health my whole entire life. I work with Black and brown kids, Pacific Islanders, Latinx, African Americans, and I've seen them go from being disruptive in class to graduating in college, right? It can absolutely work. But at the end of the day, we have to redefine this model so that it fits us. And again, Ali brought it up. Very racist. But we have the power to put leadership in place to begin to work on that. Thank you.
So I spent several semesters at Mission High School as part of the teacher training program. And so, when you're in the classrooms there, you can see where we need the resources. We need more teacher training on cultural sensitivity. We need more paraprofessionals to come up through the system to become teachers. There was a pair in the hallways who said, I really want to be a teacher, but she puts in almost a full-time schedule. How in the world would she fit in the teacher training, right? So we have to enable and build capacity to have our parents be able to make a living, and so we need the homegrown teacher training program for the middle and the high schools. I also find what's really important along the lines of the restorative justice is that we need to create community circles. We need more resources like the social workers. We have to build trust within communities. So maybe the health ed classes, instead of having somebody talk about this and that, can we have young people working in circles so that they can reach across racial, socioeconomic lines and get to know one another? And teachers have to understand what adolescents are going through. They have hormones, the young ones and the older ones. Like you see the difference in middle school, but for sure in high school too. We need to understand, how to let them let their energies out. That's natural. That's not a bad thing. But make learning come alive so they're not having to sit, have their bodies sit in seats for 6 or 8 hours. Especially when we have students, like I had a student from Eritrea who worked 40 hours and he was falling asleep. We have to understand what's going on.
So if the first phone call that a parent gets from a school is the notification that their child has been suspended, it is a failure of our district and our schools for that to happen. And I feel really strongly about that because precisely that same thing happened to my younger brother, right? And statistically, he should not have made it, right? His first suspension was in 6th grade. My mom got 0 communication from the school. And I was listed as a backup contact, which is why I got a phone call saying my younger brother was suspended. And as a student of color who grew up low income in a government subsidized housing as a single parent household, statistically, every other suspension from that point forward and eventually some of his expulsion would have indicated that he should not have made it. And that is we need to deal with that, right? That is information that we need to take in and just recognize at face value. I have been trained, my school, I'm very happy that I got placed at the school that I taught at, in that, I was actively part of our team that rolled out restorative practices in social emotional learning at my school site. Our school was a mess 4 years prior to me getting there. And it turned around for a few things. One, we were directly trained in restorative practices by the Restorative Practice Institute. My principal, who now had done national trainings, was specifically trained around that. 2, we had an actual curriculum around social emotional learning that we use weekly with our students. We built in weekly grade level wide meetings and had community circles with our homerooms. These are like school-based institutionalized practices that we can actually do that provide the space and opportunity for our teachers to actually have those conversations with our students and build those relationships that will change outcomes, right? But it takes time, it takes the prioritization of a school leader, and it's hard work, but it's a real thing that we need to deal with, absolutely. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kiana. I'm a junior at Leadership High School. And my question is, if you are elected, what will you do to make sure that students are involved in decision making, to make sure that what you choose is actually working for their schools? Oh. Okay, my question is, how will you make sure that students are involved in decision making about their schools to make sure it's working?
So if I will again, so I helped build, well, I actually built the Youth and Government program in the Bayview, and they also have one up at Burton High School right now. And so I say that because we need civic engagement curriculum starting from elementary school. We have to start educating our young folks, I mean, as early as them, to understand what the political process looks like so they understand that they have a voice to be able to come to the table and advocate on levels that they don't even know of today. And kind of going back to the question earlier, we need more men to show up. Every time I come to these things, there's all the mothers in here. Like, where the men at, okay? I'm going to close that one. All right. Yeah, but we need a K through 12 civic engagement program so that we can start educating our kids. And then we also have to encourage our kids to run for office in school. Run for office. Know that you have power. Know that you have voice. And then when you graduate from high school, run for office again. What did Obama say? If you got a problem after this, pick up a clipboard and go out there and collect some signatures and run for office. Okay, cool. I got some more time, right? And so that's another thing, and that has to happen all the way across, right? And so I'll just leave it like that. Thank you.
So I want to speak to this because my daughter actually is on the school site council at her school, and the first year, she's like me. The first year, she wanted to run, like they weren't even compliant. And in middle schools and high schools, you're supposed to have students as a part of the decision-making process. But a lot of times, it's just like run for office and we'll plan a dance. That's not what I'm about, okay? Kids need a voice in their school, and they need it through leadership programs. There are organizations that come into schools and they actually work with schools. Coleman is a great organization. Peer Resources, there's Mojo. Those are organizations that actually give students opportunities to take leadership on changing things in their school. That's what I did when I first started as a peer resource coordinator. Kids took on issues they wanted to talk about, and then you support them in mobilizing. And that has a huge impact on the culture of a school. And it's an untapped resource that we don't even look at. But then even just on another level, I worked at Burton to help kind of figure out their plan for their community school model, and you can go out and do focus groups. You don't have to, assess everybody. But why aren't we doing that? Kids will tell you. If you ask them, they will tell you even when you don't want to know, right? And so to go out to schools and actually do focus groups and ask, how is this program working for you? Do you feel like teachers are listening to you? Do you feel like you have a voice? What would make this school better, right? We're not doing that, and I don't understand why not. We don't have to do it in every school, but we could be targeting schools and gathering this information and sharing it back out, right? And that would be a way that they could have a voice.
So we often have this top-down model of leadership, right? We have like one student body president, we have one student representative on these student site councils. Decisions are best made when they're made in a body, a group of people who work together. So let's encourage student clubs to be at all of our schools so they are participating and talking about decisions affecting their communities, whether it is displacement or low funding for schools. And from that, why don't we have students be part of contributing ideas around where budget should go for the programs or the PEEF monies or the LCAP monies that come in. Just create a day, make it fun at each of these school sites so that they are sketching these things out on butcher paper. They're putting out ideas the way that adults and nonprofits and all our organizations and schools are doing. Let them do some of this work. That would be really, really powerful. And so the students have such an important voice that we really need to take those voices seriously. So I think the representation on the board really involves us also reaching out to each of the schools to build that capacity and leadership. And finally, I think at our middle schools that are all going to become beacon centers, how about have the students be part of that design? Because this takes a school, the building, away from just being, 750 to 150 or 750 to 6. Students can contribute to say, how can this place be a resource for me? Internships, jobs, support for my younger brothers and sisters.
Hi, Alita Fisher again. We do try and do some encouragement of students. There's the Student Advisory Committee. That's a district level committee where some students are elected, some are appointed by their schools to participate. There are 2 student members who sit on the Board of Ed, actually, or join all the Board of Ed meetings. So that's really encouraging to see. One of the things we need to keep in mind, though, is that representation matters. So we as a CAC, we actually this year are pushing for schools to nominate students with IEPs to the advisory committee, because otherwise, how are these students talking about issues that are important to kids with learning differences or who have disabilities? Are we also appointing students from English learner backgrounds? Are we appointing students from some of our most marginalized communities? I mean, there were a lot of kids in I was not the kind of kid in high school who would have stepped up and said, oh, pick me, I want to go. I would have needed that encouragement. And so I think that this is where we really need to force, like you said, not top down, but at that grassroots level, we need to make sure that our teachers are all thinking about the kid in the back of the room who has the potential and saying, come on, join, let's go. Just go to one meeting. Start with one meeting and see how it goes. I think that could be a game changer for a lot of our kids, just being asked to be at the table.
Hello, Phil Kim. So there's a lot of great ideas. I'm gonna focus specifically in on one. I think our budget is a huge testament to the priorities of our district. And in my opinion, I think that student voice should be elevated for specifically our local control accountability plan and that process that includes there. There's already some student representation through their kind of smaller groups that they have, but I do think that that's one particular area. So for those who aren't fully aware of how our funding goes, when the money comes from the state, the district is actually required to create a plan called the Local Control Accountability Plan that includes parent voices and members of the community and kind of crafting a way in which we distribute our dollars. In my opinion, we need to make sure that student voices are at that table. I've been to our presentations for the Local Control Accountability Plan that our district has had within our schools and communities, and all of them have amazing parents who are there to provide voice. And we need to have some that are just solely dedicated to listening to students and empowering them with information of like, this is what our money goes to, right? Like, is this actually landing in the way that we want it to land? And taking their feedback and adjusting kind of our priorities and how we align our resources and programs to what students are directly telling us is like working and not working for them. And I think we can do that at a strategic way across our district to make sure that students are at that voice or at the table for specifically around our budget. Thank you.
All right, the time is 3:25. Let's give our candidates a hand. Now, I would go around the room and just, I think I will. No, I won't do it. But go around the room and just ask, for example, the second person, what that person's name is and who knew it. But I'm not going to do it, but it's really important that everybody knows who's been speaking, and so that when you look at the ballot, if you want to vote for someone, you know who you're talking about. So I'm going to ask one more time for all the candidates to stand and say your name.
I'm Alita Fisher. I'm Allison Collins.
I'm followed by Lily Levitt.
We now love it.
Phil Kim.
Wonderful. Thank you very much again. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so we're going to transition. I want to make an announcement. Two things. One, everything's being videotaped. Everything that you saw and everything that you're going to see is being caught on video. We have a website. Gina over here has just been so wonderful. We have a website, and it is visvalley.org. And so hopefully we'll be able to upload the video, but also other information that we have, we'll put it on that website, visvalley.org. visvalley.org. All right? So we're going to take a 5-minute break and then come back for the supervisors. Yes. Yes. So the Department of Elections has a table. If you're not registered to vote, please visit them. Or if you have questions, please go ask your questions, and we'll see you in 5 minutes. All right, if the supervisor candidates would please take a seat up here. Wonderful. One, two, three. Anybody seen Uzuri? How you doing, man? You said she's out there? She was? Okay. All right. If we're missing two. We're missing two candidates. Anybody seen the other two? Unfortunately, we've had a miscommunication. Some folks have left because they thought the thing was over. That's unfortunate. I thought I suppose I was not clear enough. All right. Sir, how are you? If anybody sees Uzuri, oh, there she is. How you doing? Please take a seat, ma'am. Wonderful. All right, that's everybody. All right, I want to welcome you to the second half of our forum. Uh-oh, our translator. Yeah, but we still have someone who needs translation. Two people. They're. Are you the translator? I know. I'll make that. Well, I know, but we're just going to give full disclosure. But we have no choice because we don't want anybody to be left out. All right, so please, if you could, translate. Oh, really? Okay, the headset is back there. Over there, it's back there. No, you can't bring it. It's wired. Thank you. All right. She's asking a question as well. All right, I'm just waiting for Marlene to get set up. I remember when I was in high school and I saw the languages you could take. And I remember seeing Chinese and thinking, I will never need Chinese. Right, I was wrong. I wish I had taken it. Okay, are you ready, Marlene? All right. All right, wonderful. All right, first of all, let's give our supervisor candidates a hand, please. I'm going to introduce the moderator for the first half of the supervisor's candidate, and that is Lavon King. She's going to come.
I'd like to start out by asking everybody to raise their right hand and just take it and give yourself a pat on the back. Because you made it, and there's a lot of things happening today. But this is Eagles Way. We're here because we love our community, we love our children, our seniors, everyone. So I'm gonna, can you hear me? Because I got a big old voice. Okay. So I need some questions, yes?
No, you better call up people who are going to ask.
Okay. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to give each candidate 2 minutes to go up to the microphone and introduce yourself. So you can go in order or however you want to go. The microphone is right there.
Sure. Right. How's everybody doing? I only heard from this half the room. How's everybody doing? Great. Just because you got a t-shirt on don't mean you can't speak. All right? All right. Thank you. It's all right. My name is Theo Ellington. I'm a candidate running for District 10 Supervisor. And because we are in the house of God, I want to first give honor and glory to God. And thank you, Pastor, for having us. I'm born and raised right here in this district. This is a neighborhood that my grandfather moved to after World War II for a better opportunity for his family. And he moved right over to Sunnydale. He got a good paying job as a laborer. And he used to say he rubbed his pennies together to save up enough money to purchase a home off of 3rd and Paloux. If my grandfather was alive today, he would not be able to afford to live in San Francisco, nor would he be able to relive that dream. My mother raised my brother and I on $18,000 a year as a concessionaire at Candlestick Park. If we would have to relive that story, we would not be able to afford to live in San Francisco. This community has experienced way too much injustice, and that's why I've entered this race. I no longer can stand back and watch this community be forgotten about. I can no longer sit back and watch this community be the victim of environmental injustice time and time again. This is why I stood up when Tetra Tech lied about the environmental injustice happening at the Hunters Point shipyard. We filed a lawsuit against Tetra Tech asking them to repay taxpayers and repay the residents and homeowners of this community. This election is about the future of San Francisco. And believe it or not, you have a choice. You shouldn't have to be told who your next supervisor is. You've got a choice to select that for yourself. So I hope you listen to all the candidates up here and vote for the candidate that you trust. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone. My name is Gloria Berry. We still have a few Chinese community members here, and to them I want to say Nehoma and Doje. I'm a native San Franciscan, born here in 1969. I went to public school for 6 years, and the same problems that exist in the public school system in the 70s that exist now, my mother got frustrated with that, and she took her child support check back then to put me in private school here in San Francisco because of those problems. My senior year in high school, I panicked because my family couldn't afford college. So what I did was I joined the Navy to get funding for my education and to get a skill. I served for 12 years. During that time, I was responsible for writing policy and making decisions that affected thousands of lives. After that, I came back. I've been an advocate all my life. I've been involved in activism. I speak out against racism, sexism, not hiring local contracts, and environmental racism. After that, I actually worked in Visitation Valley at Sledge Lock, so to me it's amazing that they still have not completed a project in that building. When I talk to the community members in this community, no matter if it's black, white, or Chinese, everyone says trash is the main problem in Visitation Valley, and that's sad. So I want to be that supervisor that doesn't dismiss the small issues, which they see like trash as a small issue, and advocate for the people. Because guess what? Caring about people doesn't get you elected, but I'm gonna be the supervisor that will do that. Again, my name is Berry, Gloria Berry, and my website is berrysmart2018.com. My sign, if you'd like to, oh, time, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Can't see it.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Shaman Walton, and I am a candidate for District 10 Supervisor. also your current representative on the Board of Education. I know we usually get up here and give a spiel about all the reasons we're running and talk about our track record and everything, but I just wanted to say this. We need somebody who's going to represent us in City Hall, somebody who's going to be listening to the community, who's going to be with the community, who's always been with the community, so that when they go into those meetings, when we're in those rooms having conversations about what the community needs are, we're representing the words that come from all of you. And we're letting City Hall know, we're letting every other district know, we're letting the entire city know that this is what we want to see happen in our communities. So just to give an example, when we talk about transportation, we've all talked about stopping switchbacks from the T. You suffer the most in Viz Valley if the T doesn't finish the line. You can't get to your children, you can't get to school, you can't get to work. That happens because of the institutionally racist practice of switchbacks. But then we have all these studies that Muni want to bring into our community to study widening lanes, to study certain things without the infrastructure that we need. So my point is this: we will stop letting them just study us and make them do the things that we've already talked about that we want to see. There are transportation plans that exist right now. And so instead of us letting them come and continue to do studies, we say stop right now and do the things we asked you to do. Bring another dedicated bus line down 3rd Street. Bring the 53 back so we can get public housing residents in Potrero Hill a bus line so they don't have to walk far before they can get on the bus. Bring express bus service and rapid bus service so we can get to commercial corridors and get to our families. The last thing I want to say is you can look across the street and see the work that we've done putting people to work in our own neighborhoods and communities. We've done it for hundreds of people in this district, for thousands over the past 8+ years, and we'll continue to do it together. Thank you.
Hey everyone, what's up? I'm Tony Kelly. Thank you for letting us be here today, and happy anniversary to the River of Life Church, it says right up there with the balloons. I've been a neighborhood advocate, not a politician, but a neighborhood advocate and organizer for 15 years, working starting in Potrero Hill on small stuff and then increasingly bigger stuff, including closing power plants, and then working with coalitions in Bayview and the whole of District 10 about getting about diesel fuel out of Muni buses, fighting to get a cleanup at the shipyard for 10 years now, trying to get a public bank so we can get more money for our infrastructure and our affordable housing needs, trying to do that for 10 years now, all in neighborhood coalitions that we've built and by working together. I want to bring that kind of advocacy, that kind of neighborhood-wide, district-wide advocacy to the supervisor's office, and it's a very different job. And I think we're all different people running for office, but I think it's also we're running for different jobs. And I think the job is to listen to the community, bring those voices forward, and be advocates, because you know that City Hall has been ignoring us for a very long time. And the people in charge of where we are today cannot be in charge of where we need to go. We need to change that. We deserve to live in a city that's not pricing us out. We deserve to live on land that doesn't make us sick. We deserve to have homes for all of our neighbors, prices that we can afford. When the city's affordable housing is too much for us to afford, the affordable housing, you know something is very wrong. We deserve to have access to the supervisor's office every single day of the year, and so I want to have office hours in the neighborhoods of District 10, either me or my staff, every single day of the year. Christmas, Sundays, every day. Because we're the complaint department. We're the link to the rest of the city government, and that's how we can be your voice, because it's your voice getting direct access to City Hall. So thank you for being here today on a lovely sunny afternoon and hearing us, and vote wisely in your ballots to come into your homes next week. Thank you.
This is not made for short people. So I'm going to do this. Okay, so hi everybody. First, I need everybody to take out your cell phones real fast. And my phone number is 415-368-4436. So my name is Azuri Peace Green. I stay in Potrero Hill Public Housing on Dakota Street. Now, I've been living there for quite a while. My aunt lives up here on Sunnydale. My cousins have lived here in Sunnydale, so I used to run through Sunnydale a lot. I'm running for supervisor because it is time for us to be at the table and for us to have a voice. And I say us because I live right there in the public housing. I am one of the 4 Hope SF sites. And by the job that I have, because I wanted to work for the developer that's redeveloping us, so I can be on the inside to see what they were doing. And by me having the job that I have, I was able to sit in the rooms and see how decisions are made without us being at the table. And let me tell you, I done got on my job's nerves really bad because of the fact of advocating for the things that they're doing. How many people in here know about the FSS program for people that live in housing authority or Section 8? You don't. It's an escrow account. How many people know that housing authority will actually pay your mortgage, help you pay your mortgage for 15 years? How many of you know that? You don't. I just found this out. So these are the things that we don't know that are coming online with the redevelopment happening, which is a perfect opportunity for a lot of us to be able to buy in to some of these market rate homes that are being developed in our communities. How many of you have a job across the street at that development through Section 3? How many people do you know are working in there, literally working in there from the community? You don't, because in actuality, there are not a lot of us working in those. I know that, because they're not doing it in Potrero Hill and they're not doing it here. So now it's time for having somebody that's at the table. I am not no politician. I'm not trying to be a politician, and I tell you that all the time. I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. What I do want to do is have something for all of us. Thank you.
We thank you for that, each one of our candidates, and don't they look lovely? And we think of the brilliance that they have, and we just know that we're going to be blessed. We're going to put our pencils on that ballot, and we're going to be blessed. Let me just say who I am. I said LaVon King. I actually serve as a commissioner for the Southeast community at 1800 Oakdale. And I've been in that position for going on 5 years. And I did not ask to be on that. I don't like confrontation. But if somebody wants something done, you got to step up and stand up and speak up. So that is one of the reasons I'm here today. I didn't volunteer for this one all the way, but I said, okay, I'll help. And I did it once before. So I just want to congratulate all of you and each one of you, and thank the pastor and the first lady and all of the members of this congregation for opening up this space to us. So the first question is going to be asked by Jessica Campos. And Reverend, how many minutes do they have to answer the question? 90 seconds for everybody. Okay, come on, Jessica. Good call.
I reach.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jessica Campos, and I'm going to be asking the first question to all of the candidates. If elected District 10 Supervisor between the Sledge Lock development, Sunnydale housing renovation, and the Executive Park development, how will you, as Supervisor, ensure these new developments benefit Visitation Valley residents?
Anyone can go first.
I'm going to repeat the question. If elected District 10 Supervisor between the Sledge Lock development, Sunnydale housing renovation, the Executive Park development, how will you, as Supervisor, ensure these new developments benefit Visitation Valley residents?
Thank you for the question. Well, the first thing we would have to do is bring community together. We know some of the things that are on the way in the Sledge Lock. We know some of the things that are on the way at Executive Park and Candlestick Point. But we have to have a conversation with community and say, is this what you were expecting? We know about the affordable housing. We know about the fact that we want to have a grocery store out here that is quality. We know that we want to make sure that we have some type of educational institution out here. Because of the increase in growth in population, we actually passed a bond on the school board to make sure that there is going to be another school that is coming this way for our children and our families to attend. But it starts with meeting with the community and then saying everything that's in the pipeline, Mayor, the rest of my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors, we have to make sure it happens. We have to have a community benefits package in place that provides jobs, that breaks barriers to employment for everyone that's here, that provides rental assistance for families who are going to be moving into new housing, both affordable and housing for working class families who are in our community. We need to make sure that there's services for language access for families who live in Visitation Valley that are monolingual and don't speak English. But it's all about having a conversation with community first, and then enforcing everything down the pipeline that's on the way. So making sure that when the housing comes, it's all affordable, making sure that that education institution is not just for pre-K through 12, but that when your children graduate from high school or leave a program, they have an opportunity for higher education as well. We don't have that over here. We need that, and it works by us coming together and forcing our hand.
Hi, everyone. One of the things, and I agree with him on talking to the community, but it has to take a step further and actually have the community at the table. So it's up to the community to decide on who in their community they're going to elect, and not just elect because you're on a tenant board. I mean, I'm talking about elect because you're a grandmother, or you are a single father or a single mother, and you are monolingual, and you are actually at the table helping make the decision. This is where part of the problem comes in, is that you tell those that are up here, and then they go back into the room, and then they're supposed to tell them what you said, but how do you know that what you're saying is actually being said inside the rooms? You don't. But if you have some of the people that you really trust in your community, that you know that no matter what somebody says, they're going to bring it to you real, as long as you have those people at the table with the rest of us. So as supervisor, I want to start a subcommittee, because I don't know everything that's happening in Potrero Hill, in Sunnydale, in Biz Valley, in Dogpatch, in Bayview. I don't know everything that's happening there. So to have a subcommittee, that subcommittee is to govern the supervisor on what they are going to do and what they are not going to do. And that way it's representative of every part of District 10, because District 10 is actually broken up into 7 smaller cities. It's 7 different pockets of District 10. And so we can't say that what's said in the rooms, because believe me, I've been in the rooms and I've heard some of the things people have said, and I know doggone well that's not what the community had asked for.
Again, my name is Gloria Berry. What I would like to see from Sledge Lock down in here is amenities. When I go to the condos down in District 6 downtown, the comparison to the new building developments that are out here, there is no comparison. It's almost disgusting and disrespectful how when there's developments out here, there's not the facilities they have that support the youth. They have very nice indoor, outdoor basketball courts, tennis courts, playgrounds, dog walking areas. They don't do any of that. They throw these buildings up out here, and they look like witness protection buildings. It's like you can't even get in. The fire trucks can't get in. The access is very difficult. The new development at Alice Griffin, the playground has a rock wall and a tiny little structure, and both of those two things are dangerous. It's not safe. The playground over at Kellogg Velasco Park, I don't know if I said that right, but the turf, it's ripped up. There's those little pieces of rubber that the little kids can choke on, and we got to pay attention to small details like that. And last, we got to fight against this 30% available units in this housing. We need to have 100% low income, poverty level income, no income, and Section 8 units. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campos, for the question. A couple things I want to start on. I think first, addressing some of what's happening over in Sunnydale. We had this conversation last week. I think the first thing that we need to do and make developers pay for is a clean slate program for residents who live over in Sunnydale. What that means is if you need your lease extended to accommodate for an additional family member, then funds should be made available to do that. $1 million a year for programming, to make sure that we have childcare, to make sure we have language access services, to make sure we can do something with our young people so they are out of the streets. And then the last thing, record expungements. If you got a criminal record, now is the time to start to talk about expunging those records and figuring out how to get people back to work and back to get the services and the housing that they need. The second thing Gloria mentioned, I 100% agree with the amenities. If you look at every single neighborhood, when they build development projects, the amenities come. On this side of town, that is not the case. So making sure we push, whether it's Sledge Lock, whether it's the redevelopment happening in Sunnydale, whether it's Executive Park, figuring out how to get the necessary amenities to this area that we deserve. A grocery store, parks, transit, open space, the things that every other neighborhood enjoys. The last thing that I will say is, in the coming years, this neighborhood is getting ready to be flipped upside down. We need a oversight committee, just like other neighborhoods have a CAC or a government oversight committee or a citizens oversight committee. We need that right here in Visitation Valley.
Clever. And thank you very much, Marlene Tran, for translating for all of us at very short notice. Let me tell you a specific story, because I was in a neighborhood planning process on the neighborhood side over in South Market, Potrero, and the Mission, the Eastern Neighborhoods Plan. And we tried to get two things. I wrote this language with others to get the neighborhood plan to work for us. One was that a portion of the property taxes, the increased property taxes of the new development, would go back into the neighborhood for infrastructure, for buses, for schools, for parks. And if they didn't deliver that, if the city didn't deliver those infrastructure improvements, building permits would stop. Those were two really important things. And if they stayed in there, we'd have a much better Eastern Neighborhoods Plan in those neighborhoods today. But the mayor pulled those measures out, and the Board of Supervisors passed the plan anyway. So that is how we lose on these things. The other way we lose is that negotiations for community benefits agreements happen, and then the whole new negotiation happens again after the project is done. This is part of what we're going through with Schlage Lock, trying to keep the parks that were promised to us when the plan was developed. And this kind of negotiation and fight as financing comes and goes and as the project rises and falls, we got to be really strong on that, and it needs to come from the neighborhood side. So I know how these things failed in the past, and I know we can try to build a coalition with the Board of Supervisors to correct that, because we're not going to make those same mistakes again. Then specifically, I have no time about public housing, but I want to back up what Theo said on keeping everybody in their homes. We should not have to be rich to live in a rich city.
Okay, thank each of you. And at this time, we're going to ask Fran if she'll come up and ask our next question.
I'm going to editorialize a bit because my question's a little bit vague. In light of the Valley being the most disenfranchised neighborhood in San Francisco, we are in desperate need of representation. Now, this is the question, and I'm going to say something afterwards. If elected D10 supervisor, how will you improve the quality of life for Viz Valley residents? By which I mean addressing issues about job training, educational opportunities, open space, housing, transportation, and community planning, particularly at Schlage Lock. We'd like you to address environmental, social, economic, and aesthetic injustice in Viz Valley. We need a champion for our underserved community. I know you can't answer this in 90 seconds, 90 minutes, whatever, 90 years, but we need a champion, and so that's what I'm asking you. And one more thing, I want to make sure that what you say to us today, if you're elected supervisor, you follow through on it.
Thank you.
I'd like to use my 90 seconds to go ahead with my focus on my number one priority, and that's education. We just saw the Board of Education candidates, and the school board, the truth be told, has failed us for years and years and years and years. Just recently in the Examiner, 78% of white people have passing English scores. 19% black, 29 Latino. Think about that. 100 out of 100 people, 78 white people out of 100 reading scores is up here, and ours is way down here. And that's been acceptable as the norm. And what I'd like to do is implement a tutoring program in the after-school programs, not just play basketball all evening, not just play video games, but focus on those students that need that assistance. I'd like to also partner with the corporations and the Golden State Warriors because they need to be good neighbors and do their fair share in uplifting the community. And I have to say this before this 90 seconds, but parking. Parking needs to be a focus because it's not been included in planning. Thank you.
So first of all, my disclosure is that I'm having hot flashes, so I'm not high and I haven't been drinking. So if I break out into a sweat, I'm so serious that I'm having hot flashes. But this comes, and thank you, because that is a lot. And that's where it comes to talking with the community. That's why I said my phone number. And I always say, don't call me if you're going to fuss at 2 o'clock in the morning. Wait until it's daytime. Because a lot of it has to do with what the community wants. A lot of times people come in and say, this is the job that you need. And it's like, you only have 5 people that want to do that job, but you have 50 people that want to do something else. And so it's actually looking at what the community really wants inside that community. Look at what is already here, what is working correctly, what is not working correctly, where it can be tweaked a little bit for it to work correctly, but also having everybody that's in the offices down at City Hall actually get out of their office and come down and see what is actually working. Because so many times things are funded and it is, excuse my language, it is crap on the ground. Excuse me, Lord. He understands. And in actuality, when you ask the people in the community how something is working, oh, thank you, how something is working, they will tell you how it's really working. So it's actually talking with the community, and that's how we can get a lot of this done. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's not sitting in offices and having meetings for the next year to figure anything out either. Because there have been meetings with a lot of the things that she talked about. There have already been meetings and there have already been community meetings. And trust me when I tell you, I know you've already had plenty of surveys done. So we can talk more later.
Zuri's not lying. That's her phone number. So go ahead and use that. Oops. So the only reason I'm here before you, standing at this microphone, is because I've been building coalitions in neighborhoods from the neighborhood side as a volunteer for 15 years. So I'm not kidding when I say I want to have those office hours every single day in the neighborhoods, because that's what it's about, right? And so the way you stay accountable is by continuing to show up. And there's a flyer out there at my table. They're saying, I will show up. So I've been showing up, and that's the whole point of the job, and not everyone thinks that's the job. Another thing that not everyone up here believes is that when you build on vacant land, like Schlage, that has a ripple effect through the neighborhood. And we've had this discussion at other debates, where folks think that if you build on vacant land, you're not displacing anybody. History is a cruel teacher about that. And so before we develop, and here's one specific way that I want to be your champion as supervisor, is I want to make sure that the residents and businesses that are here today, if you're my neighbor today, be my neighbor tomorrow. In public housing, on Leland Avenue, anywhere, we need tenant protections, we need business protections, we need to make sure that the residents here are served by the improvements coming to the neighborhood as you grow. Because if you miss that, then you get what happened in the Mission, where thousands of people have been displaced over the last 10, 15 years. That's happened in every other neighborhood in the city. We need to make sure it doesn't happen here. And there's a lot of tools in land use. You need to experience from the neighborhood side on land use to make sure we don't go through that.
So when I think of just general quality of life issues, there are a couple things that come to mind with respect to this neighborhood. First of all, community planning. I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but it's unfortunate that all these development projects that will happen south of Cesar Chavez, which is way about a mile away from here, they don't conform to a plan. So these are haphazard developments happening that don't conform to any citizen oversight or any neighborhood planning. So that has to change first. A couple other things. Safety. Leland Avenue, our homes around this area, figuring out how we come up with a plan to get police officers out of their cars and walking the beat. How many folks have had packages stolen from their houses, or their houses even broken into themselves? That is a problem in San Francisco. That's a problem in this neighborhood. Parking. I drove around here for 15 minutes looking for parking. Parked on a hill somewhere. Hope my car is there when it gets back. But parking is an issue in this neighborhood. I'd also say, obviously, transit, but a couple small scale things. The getting the city services to this side of town, making sure we get people out of City Hall walking into this neighborhood. There is no excuse for the guy to be sleeping on that bench on Leland Avenue for the past 5 years. That is ridiculous, and in any other neighborhood, that would not happen. Child care facility, figuring out how we get equitable services to make sure our children are protected on this side of town. Thank you.
So I know your question wasn't exactly answered yet, and I really want to talk about proven experience, because this is just a reality. We have an opportunity to put somebody in office who's actually done something in this community, in Viz Valley, and this entire district. I was fortunate enough to inherit a workforce development organization over 8 years ago that had 9 staff and a $750,000 budget, and we are employing about 30 people a year. Now we have 65 staff, fully employed people from our community. Now we employ over 600 people every single year. We have a $10.6 million budget, 90+% of that from the city and county of San Francisco. So when we're talking about negotiating community benefits for communities, when we're talking about employing people, when we're talking about increasing outcomes for our students in our schools, and yes, we have decreased teacher turnover. Yes, we have increased graduation rates for Black students, for Latino students, for students with special needs, and we continue to work hard and put resources in those areas. You need somebody who knows how to go up to a developer, to a leadership, and say, this is what the community said they want, and we're not leaving here until we get it. And you need somebody who knows how to leverage that to where it happens if they decide to not listen to you when you have something to do something. The last thing I'm going to say is this. There's no miracle workers up here. You need relationships to get this done. I'm supported by 8 members of the current board, the mayor, and most of the leadership in San Francisco. We need that for us to get things done, for our voices to be heard.
Our candidates have spoken well, and I heard the word class come up. You know, some people, well, what class are you in? Are you low class? Are you middle class? Are you high class? I'll tell you what class we're in. We're in God's class. And our next person coming is Russell to ask the question. Russell, will you come forward, please? Are you all listening? Yes. Say, we listening? Yes.
All right, hello. Thank you guys. Thank you all for coming out. We miss you in Visitation Valley, and thank you for the public to come out, because this is an important issue. It's going to affect our lives for the next 4 to 8 years. So this is a question specific. It's short, but it may take a lot of time to answer. So if elected D10 supervisor, how would you address San Francisco Unified School District proficiency gap between students from various racial backgrounds? Okay, so if elected, how would you address the school's district's proficiency gap between students from various racial backgrounds?
Thank you. So, like it was said earlier, there is a high graduation of students, yes, but can they read and can they write? Can they do their math? Because I know a lot of students right now, they can't even write their name, or they can do their first name. So it's with involving the parents and uplifting the parents. We have a lot of parents that have drug addiction problems, alcoholism, parents that work 2 and 3 jobs just so they can put food on the table. And so it's uplifting the parents and then uplifting the community itself and bringing it back to the old school. The old school is where she can get on me, and then you can get on me, and then you can get on me, and then by the time I got home, my mama got on me, but my homework was done, and so forth and so on. And so it's bringing it back and looking at the scores. It's not just public schools, and it's not just charter schools, it's all schools. And all schools need to be held accountable, which means that we have to hold the staff accountable, we have to hold ourselves accountable, and we have to hold the Board of Education accountable. So we can talk about a whole bunch of graduations, but what are our children doing after they graduate? Are they going on to college? Are they going on to trade schools? Are they even looking at college? Do they have the means to go to college? So we have to really get down to the nitty gritty, and that's where it's uplifting the parents like myself. I got 13 grandchildren and 8 children. And my oldest granddaughter has her master's, but I'm in school right now getting my master's. And so it's showing our kids that no matter how old you are, you can be educated and you can get your education. Thank you.
So it's unfortunate. Gloria mentioned a stat earlier that was in the Examiner the other day, but I want to bring it home just a little bit further. 3 out of every 10 students leaving elementary school in this neighborhood read at grade level. That is a shame. A 21st century city like San Francisco, we can do better than that. Here are 3 real things that we can do to make sure we fully fund education. The first, dedicated funds from the general fund. Our budget is, $11 billion a year? We can take dollars, city revenues, and dedicate those dollars to low and underperforming schools. That includes after-school programs, particularly for this area where you have the merging of 2 cultures happening. That's an opportunity that we can have to be the leaders in this cultural competency question that was asked. The second thing that we can do is this idea of community schools, bringing city services to actual SFUSD facilities. There's no reason why the Department of Public Health should not be housed in a school. There's no reason why we shouldn't be taking advantage of rec and park facilities. The last thing that I would like to see in this neighborhood is City College. Every other neighborhood has a state-of-the-art City College campus. We've got 3 new development projects getting ready to happen, a prime opportunity to bring an education facility right here to this neighborhood for every single resident to enjoy. So 3 simple things that I think we can start today. But it's unfortunate that our school board has become a political stepping stone for folks when our real outcomes haven't been met.
Thank you for that important question. I remember Commissioner Ellington said, just because you got a shirt on, don't mean you don't have to speak. But my people usually speak to people who speak for them. So that's why they didn't speak back to you. But here's the thing. Truancy prevention is an important piece of making sure that we increase the gap. And it's not just truancy, but it's a lot of our students are absent. So we need to make sure that we have transportation programs that get our students to school and on time and come into communities to do that. The reserves that exist, Commissioner Ellington is right. We need more of our general fund dollars going into our schools. And why do we need that? So we can increase literacy supports in our schools, because the thing about education is learning how to read before the 3rd and 4th grade. And so increase literacy supports. See, when you talk about schools, you have to know how the school district works and the city works. You can't just make believe these solutions. So we need to leverage those resources to come to the schools. We're running for supervisors. Supervisors don't have jurisdictions over the schools, but what we can do is bring resources to enhance school programming. We also need to make sure that the 1,000+ tech companies that we have in our school, all we need is 1 tech company to adopt each of our schools, particularly here in the Southeast sector. I'm already talking to philanthropy about how we can get them to provide incentives for our educators so people will get excited about coming to our Southeast sector and to our schools. To take care of schools, we also have to take care of teachers. As president of the Board of Education, I got the first all-educator teacher school district housing approved and financed. So thank you. That's what we can do for our schools.
Woo. We need a supervisor that's going to be honest. We need a supervisor that's not going to brag on the level of graduates in the San Francisco public schools when it's not the truth. It's not the truth. The school, do you know what school the most African American students graduate from? It's Five Keys Charter. It's the school where after people have dropped out of the San Francisco public school system, attend and get their diploma. I don't speak because it's a dream I have or because it's a good feeling idea. I speak from experience. I am a math tutor. I didn't have 1% increase in grades. I didn't have 5%, 30%. I had 100%. Every one of my students increased their scores within a year. So I speak from that. Also, friends in Oakland invited me to develop a school on Saturday. Another experience I had. We started from the ground up. 100% of our students graduated from high school with our support. We taught African history, which is not taught in the public school system. We taught math, which was my expertise, art, and discipline. And another thing I'd like to bring to the district is rite of passage programs. I, in a church, which I would love to have here, did those type of programs, which were effective.
When I was part of the neighborhood coalition that saved Daniel Webster Elementary School 12 years ago, we did research and we found that 1 in 6 students at the school was in a family that had an unstable home. Now, I know what an unstable home is because when I was 17, got my junior year of high school, my mother passed away of age 44 of breast cancer. At that point, we found out that my dad had been unemployed for the previous 6 years. I was the only kid left in the house at the time, and we had a weary fighting year, fist fights across the kitchen table. I got a little scar on my hand, getting hit with a knife in a fight. The cops came over a lot. My dad went to jail for 10 drunk driving convictions at the end of that year. The only reason I'm before you now is because colleges don't care what your grades are your senior year of high school. That's a family in transition. 1 in 6 of the students at Daniel Webster Elementary and so many other schools are in families in transition. So if that's the case, the other kids aren't learning as much as they could either. So this family support is what we really need. And the next $1 billion, we have an $11 billion budget now. It's going to be $12 billion next year. We need to use that next $1 billion to get a lot of what we agree on with family support. But I'll tell you there's more too. I've been advocating for a public bank for our reserves for the last 10 years because we have $8 billion sitting in reserves every single day of the year. When that money is not doing anything for us, it's like it's stuffed in a mattress. We need to invest in infrastructure, in teacher housing, in better schools, in services, things that have a long rate of return, so we can actually get the money to get this to our family support, especially in this part of town.
I think you got a station for it.
All right, so we're about to, after the question that's number 3, right? We just heard? Yes. We have one more question that has been pre-selected. As they're answering the question, I'm inviting you, if you have questions, to write your question and give it to Ronald Colthurst back there. He's waving his hand. And then we're going to choose of the questions, if any, that you all write, consolidate them, summarize them, because you may have the same kind of questions. Choose, depending on the timing, 2 or 3 of those questions to ask at the end of this section. So I'm handing out paper for whoever raises their hand because you have a question. Now, hold on. Number 2, I'm handing out a sign-up. I indicated earlier that everything's being recorded, videotaped. So their handsome and pretty faces are being taped as they speak. And so these questions are great questions. Somebody here is going to get elected and is going to have the opportunity to do what they're promising today. And we want to be able to play it back. This is what you said. All right? So the sign-up sheet is, I'm calling it the Viz Valley Accountability Committee. If you want to have a conversation as time goes on over the next few months about what they promised and how to make it happen. Just put your name, your contact information, and when the time comes, we'll send out an email or phone call, text or whatever. We'll get together and make sure that we haven't been lied to today. Amen. All right. So the next question is coming up. I'm handing out this. You can sign up, and I'm handing out this so that if you have a question, you can write it down. All right.
Thank you. I see hands up. Keep your hands up so he gets the paper to you. Okay, so we're going to go to our last question. So everybody's still alive and alert? So we're going to, and we are a very diverse community. So at this point in time, we're going to call Marlene to come forward and ask the last and final question for this segment. And Marlene is making her way to the front. And somebody has their hand in the air. I think he's getting to you. Okay, great.
Here's another short person. Okay. Thank you all for coming, and of course we thank the audience because this is such an important event, and hopefully that you will come to some sort of conclusion. So my question is, if elected District 10 Supervisor, how will you meet the current and future needs of Visitation Valley's changing demographics? OK， 佢呢個問題咧就係話，如果你選咗你係做市參市咧，你會用啲乜嘢方法咧就可以改善或者進步我哋呢個第10區嘅而家嘅嗰啲人口喺度。
So Marlene, just please, can you ask it in English one more time? Because some people probably didn't.
Okay, here's the question. If elected District 10 Supervisor, how will you meet the current and future needs of Visitation Valley's changing demographics?
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Marlene. The first thing I want to say is we're not going to wait till November 6th to be doing work in Visitation Valley. And we've been doing work in Visitation Valley for decades, actually. Going back to when we convened Family Resource Center Network, and we knew that Viz Valley didn't have the same resource center that we had in Potrero Hill, that we had in Bayview, and we came over here and provided services in the community. Or how we've been providing hundreds of jobs for folks in Sunnydale and across Viz Valley and on the Tower side for the last 8+ years. I released my policy platform a few days ago, right out here, right in Sunnydale, right in this community, because we're not waiting till November 6th before we start representing our communities. We're representing our communities today. The first way you deal with growth and change in community is to make sure that you take care of the existing community. Make sure that the resources that you've been asking for, the economic opportunity that needs to exist across Leland and all of our commercial corridors, particularly in this district, in this area of the district, happen. Then you bring community together and you convene forums and you say, if you're new to community, this is what exists right now. This is how we work together to expand the opportunities for everyone. But when you come into community, you don't try to change it. You try to understand the culture that exists and work with it. The last thing I want to say to your question, Ms. Tran, is I will work to also bring a cultural district here to Visitation Valley, like we're doing in Bayview, like is happening in other areas of the city. Thank you.
So I think at least the way I understood your question, the root of that is stems from the expanding Chinese community that is here in Visitation Valley. And there was something that came out in 2009, which was called the Language Access Ordinance. And that was set up to make sure that City Hall and inner city departments responded to the needs of the bilingual community. So the first thing is making sure that we look at either amending that law or expanding that ordinance to make sure that access is made available for groups like this, for neighborhood associations, for regular meetings, to ensure that we've got bilingual services throughout the entirety of this district. The second thing that I would say is the revitalization of Leland Avenue is very, very important. About 8 years ago at this point, 7, 8 years ago, Leland Avenue had a corridor manager where it was someone's full-time job to be an advocate for Leland Avenue. I commit to refunding that and fully funding that role to ensure we get the businesses back to the Leland Avenue corridor, to make sure we get a parks advocate, to make sure we get someone who is in touch with City Hall and the supervisor's office every single day. The last thing that I will mention again, this neighborhood will be flipped upside down in a matter of years with the number of development projects that are happening in this neighborhood. We need a Visitation Valley, Little Hollywood Citizens Advisory Oversight Committee to make sure every single project comes through the residents who actually live here. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So it's not just here in Visitation Valley, but it's also in Potrero and Bayview and everywhere else. It starts with City Hall. In City Hall, a lot of the meetings, there is no translation. So you're already ostracized if you don't speak English or understand English when you go into those rooms. When you go into the supervisor's chamber, into the supervisor meetings or any other meetings, there is no translation. So that's part of it right there. It is making sure that there's translation in all meetings. It is making sure that people, and then it's starting with the community. That's where it starts as well. My family is the freaking UN. I kid you not. There is Samoan in my family, Filipino in my family. Like at a family reunion, I literally have to tell the young people that they are all related because they're looking at each other. So it's bringing it back to the community and saying, because see, up here people say that the community is not together. But look around you. Look around. There's people of all different ethnic backgrounds in here right now. And on the ground, the community does get along in certain areas. And in certain areas, it's because people are being ostracized. It's bringing it back to our old school, to our seniors and our elders, and bringing it back to them. And then them teaching the young ones. Like you got this young man right here, and he said whose house has been robbed, and he raised his hand first. The other young man, I talk about hot flashes, and whether it's his mom or his sister hadn't him give it to me, he brought me the fan. So it's encouraging and empowering our young people, because our young people are our future. So a lot of it has to go back to translation as well, and starting inside City Hall and then branching out, because you can't ask for the community to be together, and people aren't even together down at City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a great question, and thank you, Marlene, for asking it. We've been allies for a long time about language access in this really forgotten and ignored part of the city. And one reason I have an office at 99 Leland and have a campaign office, no one else has a campaign office in the neighborhood, is to be accountable and visible, present every day in the community here. That's also why I want to have the office hours. And on language access, even in the campaign, there have been so many places we've gone where not only do I have staff providing language translation for me, but it turns out that the building we're in doesn't have translation for the residents on an ongoing basis. So then we end up helping out on that. We almost ended up translating for everybody during this exact forum here today. And this happens at City Hall a lot too. And what everyone said about language access is true. We have folks, other candidates up here are supporting a development that's being heard at the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission right now over in the India Basin. And one of the reasons that's being fought over is because the Planning Department published all the reports and documents for approving the project in English only, and only a little tiny bit was published in other languages. We're in a district where 40% of our people were not born in this country, a district where 30% of our people are limited English. We need to do so much better on this, and we should not be waving projects through that are not addressing that need in our community. And we have differences up here as candidates on that, and I will always be defending that. Also defending community planning. And then I have another point about housing and neighborhood preferences, but I'll wait till another answer for that, because I know my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to thank the River of Life Church for setting a standard on these forums. They contributed to respecting the demographics by having the translator here for the Chinese community and for inviting the Chinese community today. I also like to give a shout out to Shaman for almost quoting my flyer, which you can get out on the table, as far as stating that we need to adopt a school by the companies that exist in San Francisco. To go back to the question about demographics, I want to go back to these new developments. You'll have a supervisor up here say that having a building 70% of outsiders and 30% of people from the community won't cause gentrification. I disagree. We need to get that percentage raised, because when we put 70% of outsiders here, everything is going to change. They're going to have kale barbecue, kale fried rice, kale tacos. And that's not what the community wants. We want to, it's for real, we want to maintain our businesses. Another thing is, I want to push again the education. If we educate these young children that are here, it's going to be harder to push them out. And last, I'm a graduate of the Mayor's Women Business Program. I'd like to see those businesses come here.
Is everybody gone up? Thank you. Thank you all. So we have a few questions. We have a lot of questions, but we're going to break them down. You ask one of yours, and I'll ask one of Russell. You ask one of yours, and I'll ask one of. Okay.
Okay, so this is, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they basically break down into 2 categories. How do we hold you accountable after you're elected, and if you're not elected, we see you again in the community. Did everybody get those?
Yeah, please.
I'm going to say it. So don't start me, Chad, because somebody said what he said. So he said, how does he hold you accountable for whoever gets elected? And if you're not elected, will we see you again? Did I get that correct? All right. Go. So the way you see me today is how I was yesterday and how I'll be tomorrow. And there's plenty of people in here that can tell you. I have no time to be playing games. The only reason why I'm running is because of the fact our voices need to be heard. I was told not to run because of the fact I live in the public housing. Not. So our young people need to know that no matter where you live, you can run for anything and you can do anything. I am being held accountable because I have no time to be playing games. A lot of people, that's why I gave you my phone number, because I want to be totally accessible. I don't have time to play. I live right in the same community that you do. I'm just in Potrero Hill. I'm not out here videotaping. I'm not out here every day because of the fact I'm in Bayview, because I take my granddaughter to school, come to see my little cousin. I'm doing a lot of work in Potrero Hill. It's everyday life for me anyway. So this is nothing new. This is nothing special. This is just going to be another part to bring our voices into City Hall where they need to be, because they haven't been there for so many years. I helped start a walking school bus. All you need to do is Google me and see what I've been doing. I can tell young people that it's important for you to go to school. Why? Because I had to sit out of school for 6 months because I didn't keep a 3.0 average for my master's program. But I'm back in there now. So it's okay to say that you're not ready and that you need more help for tutoring or whatever. I got to get a tutor right now for the class that I'm about to take. So I have no problems with being straightforward with you, and I'm going to always be real with you. Thank you.
Restate my name. Theo Ellington. Ellington. Make sure that didn't come out my 90 seconds. All right. So just real briefly, how do you hold someone accountable? This is the neighborhood that I know and love. This is the district that I grew up in. I am the only candidate here who has the lived experience of actually going to school in this neighborhood. Charles Drew Elementary, Gloria R. Davis Middle School, and then I went over to School of the Arts for high school. So I know, McAteer. So I know firsthand the experiences that folks are going through who live here. I grew up on 3rd and Paloux, and then my mother moved us out to the liquor store on top of 3rd and Newcomb. So from bad to worse, but but those are the values that I have learned, I've taken from living right here in this neighborhood. And for me, it's really about when you're going to the voting booth and figuring out what you do, you have to make a decision about who's not afraid to stand up on behalf of this neighborhood. And we proved that when we sued Tetra Tech and Lennar about the Hunters Point shipyard. If you would have seen the number of phone calls that I got from folks at City Hall, from folks in the pockets of the developers, you'd be astonished. The same people claiming to represent our community were the same people who called to give me a smack on the wrist instead of a pat on the back. This neighborhood, again, is what I know and love, and I'm not afraid to stand up to do whatever it takes to protect the people of this neighborhood. Thank you.
So as we talk about accountability, I'm the only one up here who's ever been elected in San Francisco. I'm currently elected by all of you and by our communities. And so let me tell you about accountability. One, I will make sure that I'm always visible and meeting in my community. I will make sure that I'm meeting with neighborhood associations, with community leaders, with our merchants. And unlike my esteemed competitors, I actually am elected and you have my cell phone number. I actually respond when you call me and come out to ask me to come out to community. I actually negotiate and make sure that if the superintendent on his job, he comes down to the school. And if there's somebody who got suspended, I go talk to that principal, I go talk to that family, and I meet with them to make sure that things are rectified and restorative justice is happening. And I do this with, we have 132 schools. If you call me, I come. If you email me, I come. I respond to all my emails. All of my colleagues on the Board of Education will tell you that. Now, you might not always like my response, but I always respond to my emails. When we talk about standing up to people, it's easy to say when we're on the sidelines. But when you're in the game, I've gotten massacred because we kicked Teach for America out of our schools because it was only 2 years dedicated to our students. We got massacred in the media when we told them that we weren't going to allow corporations to write their names on our schools just because they donate iPads. These are things you can research and look up. We fight for our people, and we've proven it by being elected and still doing it.
So a lot of you may know that this is my third run for this office. And it came up before about what do you do if you don't win this race? Will you stay working in the community? I think I've answered that question. And you look it up, most people who lose a race like this, they leave. They're gone. Folks who ran in 2010, gone. 2014, Marlene is still here, bless her. She's a lifer. She's working for us. So am I. And just in the same way that people move here in order to run for this office, people move away when they lose. And we got to be careful about that and know that if we want a neighborhood advocate, not a politician who's trying to climb a ladder for a different kind of job that's not serving us. You got to be real careful about that. And let me talk about the office hours, because this is accountability. Let's play this out, because I'm going to have a steady parade of people, probably a lot of you, who will be like, hey, you know, we talked in September about this, and it's now February, so what's your job again? Why aren't we getting that? Why are we still having dumping on our streets? Why are we still having, you know, the quality of life issues that we have? That kind of thing. That's accountability. And the office hours, I want to focus on populations that are underserved. So going not just to schools, childcare, early education centers, but before and after neighborhood meetings, community meetings, churches, food banks, you know, daily interactions for underserved communities to bring those voices forward so we can kick open the doors of City Hall and get our voices in there, not mine, ours, and really have a district that serves the community, because that's what we need, and we haven't had that for a very long time.
Either today or later on this week, you'll be receiving in the mail your voter pamphlet. You can look at it online. It's also available at this time. Each one of us had to submit a statement, and in my statement, I included that I want to be held accountable. You probably won't see that in any other statement. I'm currently endorsed by the Bayview newspaper. You can pick up a copy or look at that online. You'll see what I'm about if you read that article. As far as my life experience, I want to quote Alexandria Cortez. Her statement was, "The people closest to the pain need to be closest to the power." See, I walk it like I talk it. I'm a veteran, and I used to be homeless. I influenced my landlord, and I just got this news today, to house homeless people in my building. Every single one of the people in my building will be veterans, and I am very proud of that. I also wanted to close and say that I don't think a candidate can tell us what we haven't been doing. I go talk to principals about other students. I go with parents to talk to their teachers. I go to the district to talk about situations that children are experiencing with their dean. So just because it's not on Facebook or social media or a photo op doesn't mean it's not happening.
Thank you very much. Is that everyone? Let's give them a round of applause. And listen up, because we respect all of you and all of your questions, and we got lots of them. We've run out of time, so what's going to happen, the pastor of this church is going to get the questions to each one of them, and they're going to respond to him by email, so we will be able to get what the answers were. Is that working with you? Okay. Let me just say, short question was, how would you address violence in the community? Where do you stand on Prop 10 and why? If elected, how would you make sure, okay, this is where my senior citizen come in. I like being a senior citizen, hey? Okay, if elected, how will you make sure that this valley is no longer a food desert and is promoting healthy eating and living for the youth? Okay, so I'm giving all of these to Pastor Cohen, and he's going to look out that you all will get some answers. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so there's a next forum, and it's happening Thursday, October 25th. And it's going to start at 6 o'clock sharp and end at 8:30. And where's this going to take place? At the Potrero Hill Neighborhood House. Also on Saturday, October 27th, from 10 to 2 at 1800 Oakdale, which is Southeast Community Facility, we're going to have a Ram-Bam health fair. Yeah. And those of you who've been there know how fun it is, so let's get together. Let's stop having little divisions here and there. I grew up at 166 West Point Road. Anybody know? Maybe it's a new name now. The school was then Sir Francis Drake, and they changed it to Malcolm X. So I got some history in this city. I've been here for a while, and I've suffered a lot of things, but I'm still standing. Thank you. Okay.
All right, let's give her a hand. All right, so don't leave yet, because this is the time when the candidates will ask each other questions. And so it will go in the order in which they are seated. The questions that they ask, they're asking is not to the whole panel, it's to the individual that they want to answer the question. All right? And the answer, again, is always 90 seconds, whatever the question. All right, so here we go. You didn't get the email? Oh, yeah.
So I did not get the email, so I didn't know that part.
I'm sorry. All speaking, please, done over there. Thank you.
And I can only ask.
You have the opportunity to ask 2 or 3 questions, one at a time, depending on the time. Okay? So
But
we're going to go.
it's of
each
one
question.
candidate, correct?
Say it again.
It's
and
of
90
one.
seconds.
It's of one candidate.
Yeah.
That's what I just said. That's it.
I just couldn't hear you.
Okay, Gloria. So my question to you is, whether you win or not, how will you help support all of D10 community as well as the other supervisors?
Say that again?
How will you work with the other supervisors of the other districts in order to better all of District 10?
That's a very important question because the current supervisors have seriously neglected District 10. When you think of a pie, it's supposed to be 11 slices because it's 11 districts. There's only been 10 slices. We've been getting the crumbs. So what I want to do is communicate with the supervisors that are in office and the couple of new ones and make it almost, I hate to say this in church, but sexy to care about the people. Because currently caring about the people does not get you elected, and they know that. So that's why they neglect this district. So I want to work with them on getting on board on the humanity train, because San Francisco's technology is up here, but the level of humanity is way down here, and we need to balance that out. Thank you.
And my question is to my Heights Challenge colleague, Azuri. I'm moving the mic down for you.
Heights Challenge.
A lot of us at this table, at the chairs, have had experiences personally with homelessness. Yours is more recent, much more recent than mine. And I wonder if you want to talk about the harsh conditions in our shelters, because we're out on the streets, and what we need to do to get more housing sooner to our folks who are living on the street.
Thank you, Tony. So he's correct. So years ago, before I moved to Potrero Hill, we were homeless, sleeping on the sidewalk in a cardboard box. And I'm not talking about for a day or 2 days. I'm talking about, I can tell you where an elevator goes down to the basement and then comes back online at 6 o'clock in the morning. Some doorways where it's very safe for you to sleep in, and sleeping in front of Martin's over there on 16th and Potrero with having an actual cardboard box, and sleeping in cars. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, oh, I think I'll be homeless. It's a gradual effect, and it's a domino effect. In the shelters, it's scary in some of the shelters because of the fact that what goes on in there. You have bullies inside the shelters, and you have people with mental health. You have people with drug addiction and everything inside the shelters. So what needs to happen is that people need to get out of their offices and actually go. I think that everybody that makes decisions need to go sleep on the sidewalk for a day. I've tried to do this with the chief. I tried to do this with the captains and with the people from DPW that come and throw everybody's stuff away. That's people's belongings. And so I think everybody my first charge would be for everybody to go and sleep outside on the sidewalk, and I'm talking about without your cell phone, Without your radios, you're going to have to sleep in the sidewalk with in a cardboard box and in a sleeping bag. And then you need to go sleep in the shelter for 2 nights. And then from there is when you start making decisions and channeling the money in the correct way. There are a lot of gifted people that live in these shelters that don't know how to get out of it because none of the people that are doing, there are a lot of good organizations out there, but they're not working together. Thank you.
My question is for Ms. Berry. You have a focus on education. I'm excited about that and just interested in hearing more about what you think we can do to improve education.
Thank you. I thought people were getting irritated about my education subject, but it really is the most important thing to me because when you have an education, you could dig yourself out of any hole. I have a friend in Georgia who got laid off, and what he said to me was, I need to dust off that degree and get back out there. So when you have that piece of paper in this society, it's what's necessary to make it. So again, I want to focus on the after-school programs because like Shaman said, the Board of Supervisors does not have jurisdiction over the school district, but we do have is access to city funds, excess city funds, and we can partner with these corporations, and the Warriors are coming next year. They need to do their fair share. That team, they just got a guy from Sweden, but for the most part is almost all African American. Why they cannot implement adopting the school program like is on my flyer that's on the table out there is too easy. It's just too easy, and I'm sure they'd be glad to do that. I speak from experience. As a tutor, it works. And then I have to ask the next question. Shaman, you are endorsed by the current mayor, London Breed. She currently came out with a no on Proposition C, and you're a yes. How do you feel about that, and why do you think she did that?
Stop right there. Hold on. Before you answer, tell what Prop C is.
Proposition C is the corporation tax, where they'll tax corporations to help fund homeless programs.
So first thing I want to say is I'm endorsed by our current mayor. I'm also endorsed by Supervisor Fewer, Supervisor Ronan, Supervisor Peskin, Supervisor Safai, Supervisor Yee, Supervisor Mandelman, 8 current members, Supervisor President Cohen, 2 state assembly members, Assemblymember Ting, Assemblymember Chu, Senator Scott Wiener, Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, and yes, our Mayor London Breed, all of my colleagues on the Board of Education, 5 City College trustees. So I am endorsed by a lot of our elected leaders in this city and proud of it because we need that type of relationship to get things done. I will never agree with anyone all the time. London is my mayor. I supported her. I voted for her. She comes from public housing just like me and many of you in this room. I'm from West Point. She's from OC. It is what it is, but we don't agree on everything. You know, all through this campaign, I've had to tell certain groups, tennis union, who's endorsed me, Labor Council, who's endorsed me, San Francisco Democratic Party, who's endorsed me. I will never agree with anybody 100%, not even my wife, who's in the back. So I say that to say, you can support somebody and not be on the same page about something. I support Prop C because I know it's going to get at least 4,000 people off the street, and it'll help us do more work in terms of substance abuse, affordable housing, mental health supports, and jobs programs in our homelessness. Thank you.
All right. I really want to ask Gloria about her kale recipes, but I'm not. Tony, I know you've been a staunch critic of the activity happening at the Hunters Point Shipyard. Can you just briefly explain why that is important for all of San Francisco to be concerned about what's happening out there in 90 seconds?
I got involved in fighting about a better cleanup at the shipyard because right after closing, we're going to close 2 power plants. I was told by my neighbors about Muhammad University up on Kiska and kids getting nosebleeds during the school day and why that was happening. And maybe it was because of the dust being stirred up at the shipyard next door. And doing research on it, it wasn't really, I found it wasn't the dust, it wasn't the asbestos dust that was causing the nosebleeds, it's something else. And there's a lot of other things that can cause it. We don't know what causes it specifically, but asbestos dust doesn't cause nosebleeds in school, but benzene does, lead does, heavy metals does, and so does low-level radiation. And what we're seeing now, after 30 years at the shipyard, is no one in authority can say clearly that any part of the land is safe. That's a problem for all of us. It's a problem for a city that's trying to put a lot more of our housing here. It's a problem for a city where more of our children live in District 10 than any other district. And it's a problem in a city where in 94124 we have a 14-year shorter life expectancy than any other part of the city. Black women have 6 times the infant mortality of white women. It's the worst discrepancy in the country with that. We have 8 times the rate of breast cancer. The list goes on, can't fit it into 90 seconds. We need to get tougher about our environment before we go whole hog into development. That's part of community planning for Bayview and Viz Valley coming up in the coming years. We need to clean up our land before we build and fully clean it. And we don't even have control over the shipyard side of the Board of Supervisors. So first, we need to get the oversight back at the board. Thank you.
All right, that was round 1. Yep. Oh, it's almost 5 o'clock. All right. All right, so we don't have time to go back around. I'm shocked. So let me ask this question, and it won't be for everyone because there's not enough time. The timekeeper is watching, so the first person that raises their hand gets to answer the question. All right? Here's the question. First person that raises their hand gets to answer the question. Only one person. If elected, how do you plan on focusing and making sure that Sunnydale/Vegetation Valley does not fall through the cracks as it has in the past couple of years? Missouri was first.
Ready? So I raised my hand because this is why I'm running. This is my passion, to make sure that we don't fall through the cracks. It's not just Viz Valley and it's not just Sunnydale. It's also Potrero Hill. Alice Griffith halfway fell through the cracks already. That's why they don't have any parking. And that's why they don't have any after-school programs for them right now. So yes, it is working with the community right now. There's a lot that I've been doing already in the rooms with making sure and working on the Section 3 for the jobs on Potrero Hill and in Sunnydale. So it's really we're working with the community, and yes, holding everybody accountable. So whether I become supervisor or one of them becomes supervisor, I like that for you passing on that sheet of having that subcommittee.